full-blown war between the United States and Iran could, in worst-case scenarios, send oil prices soaring and cause an economic downturn. With a massive U.S. military buildup underway in the Middle East, President Donald Trump signaled on Thursday that he will decide in the next 10 days whether to launch strikes against Iran. Iran held annual military drills with Russia on Thursday as a second American aircraft carrier drew closer to the Middle East, with both the United States and Iran signaling they are prepared for war if talks on Tehran nuclear program fizzle out. President Donald Trump said Thursday he believes 10 to 15 days is enough time for Iran to reach a deal. But the talks have been deadlocked for years, and Iran has refused to discuss wider U.S. and Israeli demands that it scale back its missile program and sever ties with armed groups. Indirect talks held in recent weeks made little visible progress, and one or both sides could be buying time for final war preparations. What are your thoughts about these developments? You can call us at 713-440-8870.
I've got a ton of thoughts about this, but we have somebody who can help give us better light, shed better light on all this. University of Houston energy fellow Ed Hers is with us right now. Ed, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Ernie.
Okay, so a lot to unpack here, but I guess the very first point to be, no matter what happens in this conflict, debate, whatever we want to call what's going on right now before we get any further along, is this currently having an impact on oil prices, and what do you see happening moving forward?
It has had an impact. Ever since the president ordered the Gerald R. Ford over to the Mediterranean to get into position, the price of oil is up roughly $10 a barrel over where it was prior to Venezuela. You know, Iran is different than Venezuela. With Venezuela, it was a removal of Maduro. No impact on Venezuela's oil production or output. If anything, it helped the price of oil go down because Venezuelan crude began to reach the market again. Iran's a different story. Mm-hmm. Iran produced roughly 3.2 million barrels a day in December, exports about 1 million barrels a day. If that 1% of the global market, which is roughly 106 million barrels a day, comes off, our research and analysis indicates that the price of oil would go up 20 to 25%. But here's the real challenge. If the Strait of Hormuz is impacted, if there's a partial blockade, let's say half of the oil gets through, maybe just 10 million barrels a day, that could send the price of oil soaring well over $125, $150 a barrel.
What we really, I guess most viewers want to know, what is really pressing in this whole dilemma? What do we want as the United States from this deal?
Well, the president and allies in the Middle East don't want Iran to have a nuclear capability, a nuclear weapon capability. That's been the crux of the problem for the last 2 decades.
So what does it mean if we don't get this deal immediately in these 10 to 15 days? Do you really think we will move toward the war, or will we stretch another 15 days? And what would be the best move, in your opinion, from the president?
I can't speak for the president, but I would expect that he's absolutely meaning business. He has led an attack on Iran in the past. He just had a tremendous success in Venezuela. I'm certain that that's the plan for Iran. Take out their nuclear capabilities, but probably also damage the economic engine of Iran, which is tied pretty much to oil exports.
Mm-hmm. I guess looking at the scene and how things have played out, I almost get the feeling that our position as a nation through the president is strike hard, strike fast. And so not to do prolonged wars, but go in, do what you want, and get back out again. So aligning these military vessels there, getting in position for a war makes me think if there was something, the way it would be done is just a massive quick strike in there, like they did with the nuclear facility in the past. What concerns me and worries me more is that if Iran is holding drills with Russia, this is something more than just striking one country that you have a beef with. Am I off base in the way I'm looking at this?
Well, it would depend upon whether or not Russia would come to Iran's defense. They haven't in the past. Holding drills is vastly different than going to war. Russia can ill afford a two-front war, if you will. They certainly have been stymied in Ukraine. That's drained an awful lot of Russia's resources and military capabilities. They were unable to support the regime in Syria. I don't think Russia has an appetite for looking after Iran. If it does, and that brings the U.S. and Russia into direct conflict, then all bets are off. We're really close at that point to having another world war.
Wow. Let me help us understand, and I should know this, and I think a lot of folks listening will know this, but so much happens so quickly nowadays, keeping track of everything is pretty hard to do. Where were we before the first Trump administration? We had a nuclear agreement in place with Iran, but then it was removed by a Trump administration and has led to where we are today. Is that a fair reading of the situation, or was what we had in the past not effective to begin with?
It was not effective to begin with. We had an agreement that was reached during the Obama administration. Obama relieved the sanctions against Iran, and then when Iran cheated, the sanctions against Iran went up again, not only from the U.S. but from our European allies. And Iran has very few helpers, allies in the Middle East. It's not just Israel they want to turn over. They want Saudi Arabia out of the picture as well. Remember, Iran went to war against Iraq for more than a decade. So the sanctions were reimposed during the Obama administration. The Trump administration, Trump 1.0, tried to strengthen them, tried to push Iran back to the bargaining table, and that was, fairly ineffective in the grand scheme of things. So Iran has continued with its enrichment activities, certainly is on a path to building nuclear weapons, and the rest of the world is very uneasy about that.
We saw the Trump strike that went after the nuclear facility there in Iran, and it was touted as they had decimated it, destroyed it, put them back so many years. But it seems as though that isn't what happened, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so break this down for us just so we can put it all in perspective and people can follow along. There is an agreement that is on the table that the U.S. wants Iran to agree to and come to the table with some kind of agreement on the nuclear powers. What does all of this mean for our U.S. allies? How are they positioned in all of this? What's the pros and cons for them?
Well, having Iran as a no longer a threat on the world stage is, I think, to everybody's interest. Reducing that threat is paramount, and that would lead to significant stability across the Middle East. Removing Iran as a bad actor, as an adversary, supporting proxy wars across the Middle East would be really helpful for peace, stability, and economic growth in that area. It appears to be one of those situations where it's in everyone's interest to have this nation disarmed in terms of nuclear weapons.
So it's all or nothing. It's not a midpoint that we could negotiate around things with them. So this is really an all or nothing situation with Iran and this deal.
It certainly appears that way. I don't think anybody's interested in the prospect of a nuclear war. Iran is certainly pushing in that direction. Conventional wars are horrible enough. Nuclear would be much more devastating for everyone.
What does the post-deal look like? What is the end game to all of it? We get a deal. What happens next?
We don't know yet. I think the president's about to speak about that, among other things, including his loss at the Supreme Court on the tariffs. We don't know what the final deal is going to look like because it hasn't been negotiated, assuming we get to one.
Let me just ask this, and it's purely speculative too, so please no one think that we know something we don't. But there is a lot of talk, and there has been a lot of interest from Reza Pahlavi, who is the son of the Shah of Iran, who feels he is the heir apparent to the throne there. If there was regime change, he would be somebody that would be a contender to move into that position. If something like that happened, what do you see happening then with the world energy and oil from Iran then, considering his father's position and how the world looked back then?
Yeah, his father was not a nice person either.
Right.
The ability to overthrow him was something that was wildly popular amongst Iranians at the time. I think Iran, the people would prefer a democracy and not go back to a situation where there's a king as a ruler. I mean, that's essentially what they have today. I don't think there's a future for him in Iran.
So even if, because I guess part of his mission is a democracy in which he is voted in, of course, as the leader of the country, but you don't see that as a prospect?
No, I don't think that's going to happen. I'd be very surprised if it does. He and his family have not been welcome in Iran for any number of reasons. Now, certainly, the religious sect that has taken over the leadership of the country has devastated the country economically and progressively in terms of its citizens. I think Iran was one of the most westernized nations before the revolution. I think they would really want to get back to that.
I guess as we wrap up this conversation then, for folks that are interested in the energy sector of all of this and what it will mean economically, what are you looking for and watching for over the next 10 to 15 days?
Well, there are two things. If there's an attack on the Iranian oil facilities, that will damage Iran's economic capabilities. Removing about 1 million barrels a day, which is what they've been sending to the export markets, would have the impact of prices increasing 20-25%. A lot of that's already priced into the current price of oil. If Iran is able to effect a partial blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, we could see the price of oil get to $150 a barrel really quickly. That would be more than a doubling of the price of gasoline. That's what I'm going to be looking for.
Outside of the oil and the war and all of that, briefly, what would be the humanitarian consequences if we don't reach a deal and we go to war in that region?
It's hard to say. It would depend upon the extent of the targeting by the U.S. military.
Ed, thank you always for your insight and knowledge on this area. There's no one better we can turn to. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.